So I'd like to introduce Dr. Adam Landman. Dr. Landman is SVP and Chief Informatics Officer for Mass General Brigham. And we have been friends and collaborators for many years. And I really thank you, Adam, for being here today.
Thanks so much, Julian. It's truly an honor and a privilege, and incredible to see the impact that you and everyone here has had and is going to continue to have as we go forward. So I want to kind of really quickly set a higher, sort of take a step back and set the stage for what we have to come. And also maybe you so nicely covered some of the incredible work that has been accomplished, but I'll kind of share some of my thoughts as a trainee and a clinician, kind of growing up in this environment and experiencing some of the challenges that you described. I do want to maybe just first zoom out a little bit and talk a little bit about what brings us all here today. And the first is, obviously, we want to honor and recognize the accomplishments of Dr. Goldman and frankly, all of you that have advanced this field. The second is, if you're like me, you're a bit of a nerd and you have a passion for really using health tech, medical devices, AI to improve healthcare delivery. But really the third point is, what really drives all of us is the quintuple aim, right? This is at least what wakes me up every day. We are trying to improve overall health for our patients and for the population. We are trying to improve the experience, which is really the safety, the quality of healthcare delivery. We are also trying to make healthcare more efficient and cut costs. We want to make healthcare equitable so that all the new innovations that we create are available to all patients. And then finally, we want to actually improve the experience for providers and clinicians. Unfortunately, we are facing some of the most significant headwinds right now. And in my career over the past 20 plus years, I've never seen, frankly, the world like this, but especially healthcare, right? We have unprecedented fiscal pressures. When you look at academic medical centers across the country, we are fighting to survive. Many are continuing to lose money each year. At MGB, we have like a very thin positive margin this quarter, but we are very tenuous. We are also seeing a huge barriers to access to care, and I'm assuming you and your family members feel this every day, right? It can take months to see a specialist or to get a procedure done, sometimes years. And we have very significant workforce issues, right? With very high rates of burnout. Some of our physicians, our nurses leaving the profession. I saw a statistic yesterday from Accenture that 30% of new nurses who take a new job will actually change and leave that job within 1 year. 30% turnover rate. That is unprecedented and very difficult for us to continue caring for patients with these staffing shortages. So this may sound challenging, but for us as innovators, this is also a huge incentive and huge opportunity for all of us. There's not going to be a single solution, but I really like, and Julian referred to the Institute of Medicine's learning health system framework. I really like this because it describes what is necessary, right? We need to do all of these things or a combination of these things to actually be successful and overcome these challenges. We need leadership. We need to change the culture. We need to continue to advance our knowledge bases and research and then use that at the point of care. But I also really like that this framework calls out health information and digital technologies as critical for success. We need reliable, secure, reusable information, interoperable data, and we need to use digital technologies and medical devices for continuous improvement. And so Julian really nicely described this, but if we think of medical devices and the journey, the technology journey and informatics journey they've been on, right? It starts with first building innovative devices that can collect data, measure outcomes that are valid and reliable, right? People spent a lot of time on that. And then we spent time on making those devices interoperable, making them work with the workflows, making them usable. And now with SaAMS, we have an opportunity to leverage AI. And what's been a driving force behind this is the medical device plug and play lab and Julian. Julian covered some of this, but if we think about what the OR looked like over 20 years ago, right, can you imagine many of you worked in these ORs, but you can imagine each novel device that was being used had its own way of recording data, sometimes its own computer system. So if you're trying to manage in that environment, you've got multiple computers throwing data at you, and you've got different ways of controlling all of those devices. And so this idea of an OR of the future and being able to have single device that an anesthesiologist can sit in front of, see all the information about the patient, their physiologic data, control the ventilator, look at their arterial line, make adjustments. This is all commonplace to us now and standard in our ORs, but wasn't before these initiatives and all the hard work that you guys did started. I don't know if, well, folks here may recognize, but 20 years ago when MD-PNP was established, I was an intern at Harbor UCLA Medical Center in Torrance, California. It's a county hospital in Los Angeles. And we use paper charts. So that's what the left-hand side is. And what the challenge was, I remember having to come in at like 5:36 in the morning. The first challenge was finding the charts. And I honestly think that the nurses, it was a game and they probably hid them from us as the interns trying to test us. But honestly, I spent my mornings going room to room, recording vital signs, writing them in the chart, then summarizing them. And I remember writing the min, the max, having to mentally compute all this, using that as time. And I think one of the most exciting, and this is seems like a small thing, but this is transformational. When we were able to connect medical devices to electronic health records and do biomedical device integration and have the data electronically move over, all of that was only possible because of the standards that all of you spent thousands, maybe tens of thousands of hours developing and technologies to enable it to seamlessly transfer. Our interns don't even recognize this as a challenge. When they come in the morning, they hit a button and they get the up-to-date, summarized, trended vital signs for all of their patients. That was like half an hour to an hour of my day every day during my internship. And so just that advancement was a massive advancement in enabling our clinicians to improving the experience, to enabling the clinicians to now work on assimilating that data, thinking about what it means and how to apply it. And this is just a picture of what it looks like in Epic when the data pops in and is validated and shows up really nicely. Julian alluded to this, he skipped through this, but I think this has also been transformational, the work that all of you have done around remote control of medical devices. This started in 2014 with Ebola. So Ebola is very contagious and has a very high fatality rate. And so, and these patients get extremely sick. So they're often in the intensive care unit, intubated on multiple drips. And we want to protect our healthcare workers, right? And so they're wearing PPE, but we want to also keep them out of the room as much as possible and reduce the amount of PPE we need. And so this ability that Julian and many of you in the room developed to be able to control devices safely outside the room, sometimes at great distances, was transformational. And this came back right in 2020 and 21 with COVID and provided relief to some of our staff and protected our staff. The thing that keeps me up at night is cybersecurity. All right, and you cannot go a week in this country without seeing an announcement about a healthcare organization being hacked, right? And if you don't believe this, then think about Ascension, massive healthcare network that is still down on their electronic health record, or think about Change Healthcare that powers many of the back-end transactions, which also has a large number of systems that are still down. And this causes direct impact to patient care, direct impact to patient safety. There are emergency departments that have to be closed because we can't take care of them, ORs that are closed to elective procedures. Now, this also applies to medical devices. There was a 2022 report that the FBI cites that really said that over 50% of medical devices and connected devices in a healthcare environment have at least one critical vulnerability in it, right? And this, if you think about this, like I worry about the EHR being down. It creates inefficiencies. But if we have a vulnerability in a medical device and a hacker can get in and actually change data in that medical device, I worry that that weaponizes me and other healthcare providers. Imagine getting in and changing a lab interface and saying that the potassium is low, and then I go and push potassium into a patient and kill the patient. Or you change the physiologic monitor so it's showing that the patient's in VFib or VTAC and we defibrillate a patient. right? We can cause real harm. This is a real issue. And so Julian described some of the work that you all are doing. I'd like to make a personal plea to the device manufacturers here that please, I no longer want to hear the FDA will not allow it. I need devices to be updated, patched with the latest updates, fix the critical vulnerabilities, and please find a way to install antivirus on your devices. This collective room, we have to be able to figure this out going forward. It would be a massive, massive advancement for our patients and for healthcare overall. And Julian, with the medical device plug and play lab, has created sandbox environments. We can work together. We can test this out. We can figure out and plot out what the future is together. The other thing that's in the news these days, and you can't go a day without reading about it, is AI, right? And generative AI has really shifted. We've been doing AI for 30 years, but generative AI has really shifted the curve upward. And in healthcare, AI is now being applied in almost all aspects of healthcare, from back office features like revenue cycle, to clinical trials, to population health analytics, to patient-facing apps, to apps to help with workflow and clinical decision support. Eric Topol has a nice framework here that really is sharing that the next sort of advancements in AI are going to come from multimodal biomedical data, and really being able to take different types of data, not just EHR data, but genomics data, imaging data, physiologic and biomedical device data, combining that all together and building algorithms from those data. And so if we start to think of medical devices with AI in them, let's talk about the first one, which is probably the most widespread use of AI in hospitals today, which is electrocardiograms, right? You may not notice this, but ECGs ever since I've been trained, so over 20 years, have had an electronic computer read at the top of the ECG, and they are really good, right? They have been very well validated. They're excellent. Well, what we're seeing now with some of the new sophisticated AI algorithms is not only can you get the read, which we think of as the read, but there are now algorithms that from an ECG can actually determine the patient's age, their gender. It can determine their ejection fraction of their heart, and it can even determine if they have anemia. These are things that we can't see with a human eye, but AI algorithms can. Another application is the ophthalmoscope. So I'm an emergency physician, and I will frankly admit, I know this is being recorded, but it's been very difficult for me to master the ophthalmoscope and getting a good view of the fundus, right? So there are now devices that allow me to be able to very easily see the fundus. But now I can see the fundus. I'd be maybe marginally good at detecting if there's increase in intraocular pressure, which is really important in some of our patients in the emergency department. But now there's AI that can not only detect an increase in intraocular pressure, but it can actually detect how well controlled someone's diabetes or hypertension is. And amazingly, it can even do things like detect if the patient has Parkinson's disease, right? Just by looking at the retina, and even be able to help with an indicator of hyperlipidemia. So these are amazing things that we cannot see with our eyes, but that AI is enabling us to do. Julian briefly mentioned home hospital and was clearly years ahead of his time in this. As many of you know, home hospital now has demonstration programs, and there's funding for hospitals to pursue these programs. MGB has been a very early entrant into this area, and we are rapidly expanding our program. We are currently caring for about 50 patients as our average daily census in our home hospital program across the greater Boston area. And we are using remote patient monitoring. We're having our patients use a wearable so we can monitor their vital signs remotely. But what's really exciting is if you pair that RPM with EHR data and layer AI on top of it, this idea of multimodal AI that Eric Topol has been advancing. And so in the home hospital setting, what if that helps us to detect a patient that might be at home, but is at risk of deteriorating and getting worse? And we could potentially intervene and move them back into a hospital setting instead of being at home. Or what if we could detect that they're at risk for falling? And again, intervene sooner. So there are some incredibly exciting applications of biomedical devices and AI in the future. But what we need to advance them is we need to make sure they're safe, they're reliable, they're valid. we need to potentially get FDA or other approvals for these algorithms. We need to ensure that they are not biased. We need to absolutely protect cybersecurity, as I mentioned early, and think about informed consent and transparency to providers and to patients. Well, if you think about all of that, that's exactly what the medical device plug and play lab has been doing for 20 years. And so it makes so much sense now with the formation of the Center for Smart and Autonomous Medical Systems. They'll now do this for medical devices and AI and be able to apply their expertise, their simulation, their research and teaching to help us now move forward. But what's equally important is the partnerships with all of you in this room, with industry, with government, with clinicians and researchers from across the world and hospital settings. Dr. Ann Klebanski, who's the president and the CEO of Mass General Brigham, unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she has been an incredible proponent and supporter of Julian and the lab's work. And I just want to take a moment and read some comments that she sent. The integration of smart and autonomous medical systems within healthcare settings will revolutionize patient care by significantly enhancing precision, efficiency, and outcomes with new and emerging technologies. These advanced capabilities are pivotal to our mission to deliver cutting-edge treatments and improve health outcomes on a global scale. Since 2004, under the leadership of Dr. Julian Goldman, the Medical Device Plug and Play Lab has positioned MGB as a frontrunner of global cross-sector innovation and leadership in patient safety, paving the way for a future where smart and autonomous medical systems become a standard in healthcare. I think Anne really said it well. So I want to thank you for all being here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you briefly. And now really the exciting part comes because we have some of the greatest minds in industry, government, and academia right here in this room. And you're going to hear from many of them that are really going to bring to life how medical devices, novel technologies are going to continue to improve clinical outcomes as we go forward.